the woman, those discrimination against the woman, like putting that glass ceiling, those draconian laws that are opposed to giving access to our young women, the girls, those things that stand in the place of expectant mothers, those extremism in the workplace that tells you if you're pregnant, you cannot continue to work here, or you have to get pregnant once every 3 months or 3 years rather. Those violence against the woman, terrorism, kidnapping of our girls is unacceptable. We cannot speak of having a Women's Day without seeing how we can address the lack of psychological safety of our young girls, and women in general. So we need to look at those things that affect the well-being of the woman: kidnapping, terrorism, lack of safety, the mental health issues, the domestic violence, the sexual violence in the place of work, and what have you. So these are the areas.
Thank you very much, Teresa. And I would say that you actually have touched on some of the something for the other questions that I would have asked, and you started on that. Yes, you have actually touched on a bit of that in terms of asking what are the key issues that are affecting women in our society today, and you have touched on a few of these, and thank you very much for your contribution. But what I'm hearing is, again, the fact that we need to challenge the status quo. Comes from Beatrice talking about the fact that we need to work towards a point where there's no need anymore to have an International Women's Day because women are marginalized. Now, if everything is equal, since there's no International Men's Day, how are we working towards that? And that all comes in also talking about the action that we need to come through the fact of inclusivity of males and all, which Prof. Nanaba mentioned, the action. So action is just coming through. And I'm happy that you are all on the same page, and we're saying we all need to start thinking, how are we going to move beyond what we are seeing? How are we going to move beyond every day, every year having this International Women's Day, and what comes out of it? So that theme of action, please, I think we should all keep that in mind, the theme of action, challenging, and meaning that now we're going to look at action. So I would also now come back and ask Professor Nanaba for if you have any thoughts on other key issues beyond what Teresa has mentioned, Dr. Okafor has mentioned. She mentioned issues of safety, of women being kidnapped, the glass ceiling, etc. Any other ideas, Prof?
Okay, thank you very much. I think that some of the other key issues affecting women in society and on our continent is the very fact that we are women, our biology. The fact that you would be the one to get pregnant in the relationship. Some people are lucky enough to have a very easy pregnancy, but it's not the case for everyone. And sometimes it requires that people stay out of work for a considerable length of time. And that obviously eventually impacts on their progress at work. To be the one to have the baby, to breastfeed, and be the primary caregiver, and within our context, all the domestic responsibilities that go along with them. And I have also noticed that invariably we are the primary caregivers. When you have an old parents, it's usually the women in the family who are taking care of these old do that for your own parents, you are likely to do that for your husband's parents as well. Our social responsibilities. When there are funerals, women who are running around, hosting events, doing the serving. And as I said, you do that when it is your parent's funeral, and you do that when it's your husband's parent's funeral. Even in religion, religious responsibilities. Yes, they are men dominate in religious leadership on our continent, but it is the women who do the majority of the work that needs to be done in our religious settings. And so these are some of the key challenges that invariably affect our progress professionally. And so that's what I would like to add on for now.
Thank you very much. You've touched on many issues, and we need to keep those in mind. And I think that also brings us back to looking at how we are challenging the status quo. And Dr. Akafo mentioned the issue of the fact that sometimes women are being stripped of their rights of being a woman. And you've mentioned that. So we need to look at that, women in the workplace, all the things we need to do, and the fact that sometimes you are made to feel almost like a burden for being a woman in the workplace, because you have to, all these other roles that you have to meet. So would like to thank you for that. And also ask Vice Chancellor Teresa.
Thank you very much. I think while not wanting to repeat what my two sisters have said, those before me, let me just come back and reiterate the problem of persistent discriminatory practices fed by the patriarchy and negative social and cultural barriers. Right now in Cameroon, we have a situation of what is known as the Anglophone crisis, and we have a lot of internally displaced persons, and those most affected are women and children. And if something is not done, by the time this is over, a lot of our women in these regions would have simply lost their self-worth. So there is this issue of the mental health. Then there's COVID, the COVID-19 pandemic. What is happening? There's a lot of violence, sexual violence, because a lot of men have lost their jobs and the women are paying for it. Because what happens when they get frustrated, many of them, there's violence in many homes, and then the women are silent about it. They don't want to talk about it. Those are really worrisome issues. And then those who may want to get into politics, they don't have the funds available to help them, to organize those, all that goes into elections and campaigning. So there's lack of funds for those who could go into politics and also help other women. And then we have low access to productive resources, such as access to land, capital, labor, and all of those. And before I end, let me just bring in the effect of climate change, particularly experienced by rural women. A lot of women now have gone into agriculture, but there's this issue of climate change, the effect of it, and it's something that we women must really look into and lobby our governments to really help the rural women. There are many of them who start planting as soon as rain falls, and then the rain stops, and then the crops are gone. And these are issues because the rural women basically feed the country. So I think those are some issues that we should start focusing on. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for those highlights, especially bringing in these issues of our rural women and also the issues of climate change. And one thing that I'd run through what we started with is also breaking or challenging the silence on some of these issues. So I want us to move it on now onto the operationalization of what we need to do. We know what the problems are. Now, what are some of the steps that we may need to take to be able to address some of these issues. And I'll kindly ask Mrs. Sheila Boma to give us some perspectives on that, and Dr. Teresa Okafo, give us some perspectives on what we actually need to be doing to be able to move out. As Dr. Anjenga mentioned earlier on, we need to move out of the space where we always have International Women's Day and we talk and talk and talk. Now the action. What are some of the actions and activities we need to put in place, especially as women in higher education?
Thank you very much. I think that as women, we have an important role to play in finding the solutions. And it's quite interesting to think that women are the people who orient a lot of the boys and children who become men and who have the same biases or who feel uncomfortable with having women in certain places. In many instances where people need care, like my other colleague said, it is a woman who is there providing the care. And during those times, it is a woman who is making all the decisions about the person's life. And so if you can entrust a woman to make decisions this important about your very existence when you are vulnerable, and it is the woman who provides care and nurturing when children are vulnerable, and actually shape their orientation of society and their values and many others. What is it that as the people grow? So as women, possibly our initial role will be the communication at home. How are we communicating to our boys about and our girls about the future? What do we say to our girls? And maybe the generation has changed, but many homes will tell the girls, you get married to a rich man and take care of me, and will tell the boy, you will build a house for me. Now, if I have to get married to a rich man and the boy must earn the money to build the house, what am I saying to the two genders? So as women, finding the kind situated within the context of a 21st century environment where we don't have the luxury to be housewives anymore and just be at home and benefit from the income of a meal, and ourselves have to be breadwinners as well as to have the full responsibilities of being mothers and caregivers, then we need to also change the communication as part of the lobbying, because every man out there comes home to a certain woman, be it their mother, their wife, and what have you. And so communication and the lobbying, we have to start from home. We would bring it to the bigger platforms like forums like this, where we continue to encourage everybody to ensure equitable, inclusive policies and be more supportive of women as they play their biological roles and other roles, rather than penalize them for those roles. How do we support them through that role and still ensure that they play the roles they have in careers? And like my colleague was talking about politics, very interesting observation happened recently when I was traveling across the country just around the election, and I saw a woman's billboard somewhere, and I said, oh, this woman is quite pretty, I hope she's going to win. And somebody immediately tells me that in this society, we would never vote for a woman. We are quite uncomfortable for a woman to lead us in such an important role. But for me, what is important here is that she knew, I'm sure she's very aware of the environment she's coming from, but she chose to challenge. And she may not win, but she has given them something to think about and given them something to reflect on. And so in the next time when another woman presents herself, she would go through less resistance than her predecessor. So there is a lot we can do as women to make society comfortable with us in various roles, because we already do it in areas that are very, very important to their very survival. So they should be comfortable and support us when we aspire for leadership in politics, in corporate world, in religious space. It's all about how we start the communication.
Yeah, so thank you very much. So women, basically, we need to step up the plate and really act, do various things. Like the example you've given us, you may see that there's a challenge. Nevertheless, take it up, because you are creating space for other women behind you, no matter what the outcome is for you. Thank you on that. Dr. Teresa Okafor.
Yeah, thank you so much. I think my predecessors have said it all. I'm really impressed with the level of discussions we are having. I'm really very impressed. Let me say this. Albert Einstein said, if you give me 1 hour to change the world, I will spend 55 minutes thinking about the problem and 5 minutes in finding a solution. So I think that in finding solutions, we cannot exhaust the value of dialogue. And what I mean is, problem-led dialogue. What are the problems? So when we have a good understanding of the problems, and then we're just about finding solutions to those problems. Now, first of all, again, re-echoing what my predecessors have said, and I liked particularly what Sheila said about, not penalizing women for those roles that they have to play, which ties in with what every other speaker has said, especially Professor Nana, who said that women as primary caregivers and the ones who get pregnant, and what is being done to support them. So I'd say that we have to cease seeing pregnancy as a problem. We have to, yes, because pregnancy is not a problem. And we will begin to understand that when we understand that the child is the economic agent of the future. Now, if the child is the economic agent of the future, then we have to have structures in place to support the expectant mothers and reduce the rate of maternal deaths and infant deaths, finding true solutions and not just the rhetorics and the political correctness regarding all of this. Then we have to think of structures, having structures in place to support girls and women, so to speak. And what do I mean by structures? Again, many times this could be the fruit of research. And when I talk about research, I'm talking about research that is problems-led and a research that comes out with outcomes, and not just outcomes, but actually comes out with impact assessment. What did we say is significant about this research? And how do we assess the impact that this research is having? We have said that many of our young girls are vulnerable to kidnapping, terrorism, and what have you. Now, what is being done to ensure their safety? What structures can higher education ensure that is put in place? What discussions can we be having at the level of higher education to ensure that safety measures are put in place to safeguard our young girls, to make them less vulnerable to promiscuity, to kidnapping, and all those things that block access for our young girls and young women? So this is, I think, a task facing higher education. And we will not be doing a service to women if we do not try to see how we can support one another, how we can put these structures in place. Professor King, when she was speaking, said two things that struck me. Professor Margaret King from California. Yes. She said there are resources in Africa, and she mentioned some of these resources that Africans have been blessed with. Now, what is being done at higher education level to ensure that women can also benefit from these resources? That struck me. What is being done? We've got gold in Africa. We've got diamond. We've got oil. We've got, you name it. What is being done to ensure that women tap into these resources? Opportunities are provided for women. And another thing Dr. King said that struck me, when she talked about plagiarism, she said it's a crime. Yes, even here in England, plagiarism is a crime, a huge crime. But the question is, outside of plagiarism, what is being done to ensure that if infrastructures are not safe for women, that should also be seen as a crime. We cannot be reactive when things happen. Hey, they've been kidnapped. Hey, they've been rescued. Hey, they've been traumatized. Hey, they've been abused. Hey, no, we can't be reactive all the time. We have to, at higher education level, we need to be proactive and see that structures are in place. And if those structures are missing, then it becomes a criminal offense. There has to be a zero tolerance when these structures are not in place to ensure the psychological safety of our young girls and women. Okay.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
That. Yes, we are sort of fast running out of time. It's been so stimulating, very interesting discussions, and we are just running out of time. 1 hour goes fast when you are in good company. I would want Vice Chancellor Nanaba to come in at this point, and then later Vice Chancellor Akenji come in on telling us, following up from Dr. Kafo's submission on structures being put in place in higher education, what is the role of mentoring in ensuring that women are getting up and women come into their own, especially in the higher education space? We know that when it comes to women in leadership positions in higher education, it's very few. And so we are honored to have at least 2 women who have really risen up, and there are many others, and you are standing for them. What has been the role of mentoring in your lives for reaching where you are, and what do you see as putting mentoring as structures that would help women advance in higher education, and looking at the structures that also need to be put in to ensure that women, whether they are students, whether they are staff, do feel safe and they come in their own.
Thank you very much. As you've mentioned, mentoring is very critical for progress in higher education, and I believe in every other profession. And I'm a product of mentoring. I was lucky enough to have had people who made me understand from very much earlier in my career what it meant to progress in the academy. They are young women, even sometimes young men. They start lecturing and they don't have a full appreciation of what they need to do to be able to make progress. So they may be doing all the hard work, but they will not do any of the smart work. And that is where we need mentoring. As higher education institutions, we've already narrated some of the challenges that, peculiar challenges that women face. And I like the example that Sheila gave so very much. Someone may start now, she may not get there, but indeed what she shows by putting herself out there is that it is possible to do this. So the next person will pick it up and take it a bit further. And the next person may take it and then get to the eventual goal. So generally, as higher education institutions, we need to have mentoring policies in place, which we then translate into action. And part of it can also be situated within our gender policies. Here at the University of Ghana, we are 72 years old, but we don't have a gender policy. We tried in the past, we couldn't get it through, but we have taken it up again since I became Pro-Vice Chancellor. We've taken it up again and working with people like our host, Professor Sichi Dawson. We're seeking to revive this and get a gender policy in place. Some may say that we don't even need to be celebrating International Women's Day like this and be having all of these panel discussions because it is just talk, just a talk shop, and we don't translate these into action. But I do disagree, because I think that that's the first step for us to be able to create the awareness. The more we talk about the issues, the more everyone in society becomes aware of the issues. I mean, I think that sometimes some of, particularly, the subtle challenges that you face coming from our main colleague, that comment there and that comment there. Sometimes they even do it unconsciously because that's what they've grown up with and that's all that they have known. So we need to, first of all, talk about these things. And as we talk about them, we think through and then we begin to come up with solutions. We all need coping mechanisms. We need coping mechanisms as individuals and we need coping mechanisms as institutions. We need to provide a safe space for women to come in and work. We've talked about the challenges that women face through their caregiving roles, through their childbearing roles, but how can we support them? Well, COVID-19 has taught us that we all don't need to be in place in our offices before work can be done. When work can be done from various locations, from remote locations, from home. What is it? What kind of support would we be able to provide to particularly our women so that they can work from their comfortable spaces? If it's within a home that the person can work effectively for most of the time, what is it that we can provide as a support system, as an institution, so that this person will be effective from that safe space? So mentoring is absolutely critical. We need the policies in place, and then we need the talk so that people will appreciate these, people will come on board. And as I said earlier on, we can collectively overcome these challenges because this is as an individual, yes, we need to do our part, and then collectively also we work together so that we are able to surmount these challenges, and then we can get more women progressing in higher education. First of all, the percentage of women working in higher education is not very much. Here at my university, it's about 20-something%, and the men are over 70%. And it's the same even for those in administration. And so, first of all, we have few numbers, so it should be quite easy for us to target these few numbers and hold their hands and bring them along. Thank you.
Thank you very much on that. And there is so much that we need to do. And we know that it has started in many places, and therefore we need to continue the talk to make sure that it's cemented, it's actually put in place. We would ask Vice Chancellor Akanji, and Dr. Njenga went off while she logged off, but we'll come back to her. She will have the last word. So, Professor Nkanji, Vice Chancellor, please. She in? Professor Theresia, or has her internet gone off? Let's see.
I mean, I could just put in a word regarding what Dr. Nana has said, pending when the others come in. Is that okay?
Oh, yeah, she's back. She's back, I think now.
All
she's
right.
back. Yes, whilst you wait to put in a word.
Should I go
ahead? Yeah, go ahead. Just put in a word, and
Okay,
I'll ask Dr. Njenga to put in a word before Professor Theresia comes in.
I think Dr. Nana, Professor Nana has spoken really well, but we need to be careful because I think I picked on the fact that you said you want to have a gender policy. And I think we need to be careful because the word gender has changed in meaning, you know. So gender has become a very fluid term. And I think rather than just pursuing blanket policies that may be controversial in meaning, I think it might be better to just be specific and look at the issues, which is something we're all considering today, rather than coming up with a gender policy that may be subject to different interpretation and can be quite problematic. I just needed to put that in. Thank you.
That's very useful to hear. Thank you so much. Prof. Teresa, are you available? If not, Dr. Njenga, could you put in a word concerning the issue of mentoring and making sure that many more women do achieve their best potential? And it doesn't matter in which space they are, but how can women support women, men support women to move on?
Thank you so much for the question. Allow me to not show my face because of network issues.
Definitely.
My line is very weak. I'd like to just go back to some of the fundamentals that were mentioned. As we said, equality is a fact, but the problem is that what are human rights are not being addressed. Therefore, there's criminality that leads to the issues that make us then want to, have International Women's Days, etc. So if we deal with issues at the level of human rights, equal right to life, equal access to education, equal access to opportunities derived from education, equal access to platforms for leadership, equal voice, etc.
It's very choppy.
Addressing the pipeline of basic education where there are serious leakages. Those are the leakages which lead to having smaller pools of higher education graduates, scientists, lecturers, officers, smaller pools from which to grow women leaders, champions, mentors, etc. So where these equalities are not provided for, crimes have been committed and they must be dealt with, as Professor King said. But on the other hand, as women, we also need to find out, when we are in leadership position, does it make any difference? How do other humans fare under our leadership? Are women and girls any better off simply by having women leaders? Of course, macroeconomic indicators at the global level seem to suggest that enhanced economic efficiencies have been seen with female heads of state. We've seen even in universities, we have better infrastructure, we have better partnerships, etc. But how about the detail? How about in universities, sex for grades? Does it change when there's a woman vice chancellor? Does welfare for young mothers have been mentioned, or young mothers who are working, or young mothers who are studying? Are they dealt with any differently? The detail of equitable promotion and opportunities, does that happen? We can go on women leaders in other areas, and those questions need to be raised and answered. Women as ministers of education, and we still complain about the education system and the non-gender responsiveness. So apart from those questions, I'd just like to say we need skills as women. We need skills for women, including for the area of mentorship. There are new literacies that should help to raise the level and quality of reasoning and engagement across the board for women. One skill, for instance, the issue of plagiarism came up. So we need to understand the issue of intellectual property. We need skills in leadership, skills in critical thinking and communication, in emotional intelligence, integrity and values, including the issue of equity and equality. And let us be seen as women when we excel across all fields, art, sciences, politics, business, education. Let us be seen to love and nurture others and use our peculiarity as women for good, so that every season and every space where women have led, there will be prosperity, there will be justice, there will be good stewardship and other virtues. Otherwise, it does not make any sense to keep clamoring for those higher positions if we have not first addressed ourselves as potential leaders, but also looked at the pipeline to see where the younger ones are coming from. Are they remaining in school? Are our governments ensuring access to education for all? So if those fundamentals are dealt with, it will make a difference, and everyone may want to support the issues that are confronting and limiting the S and excelling of women and equality of society in general. Thank you.
Yes. Thank you so much, Dr. Njenga. You've given us so much also for thought, food for thought, that indeed women need to be built up and we need to support each other and also consciously make the effort to build the skills for ourselves and to come up with support systems for each other, also for women. And the whole issue of looking to see who is in the pipeline, all of that is really important, because there are times we leave things to chance and expect that, okay, just because it's a woman, or you need to look for a woman to put in place, you can't find one. We should be able to have databases and all of that. We put things together, package ourselves basically to make ourselves ready to be effective. And that's one of the words, being effective, not just being given token roles, but being given roles knowing that you are effective. And we need to go on with that. It looks, unfortunately, Professor Teresa, I think her internet must have cut off. So I'll go back to Mrs. Sheila Boama. Now, if there is anything, Professor Teresa, I can see you are back here. Yes, please, can you unmute?
Okay.
Yes.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Sorry.
Thank you.
So sorry.
Yes.
What is my intervention now?
Oh, that one was basically on structures that need to be put in place, especially for higher education. And for you being a vice chancellor, what structures really are in place for women to excel and for women to be mentored into higher roles?
Okay, thank you. I can say at the University of Bamenda, we've been trying to do the best we can do, and would have gone further than this if it were not for the 4-year socio-political crisis that have seen our students being kidnapped, our lecturers kidnapped, murdered. But the women are quite resilient. We used to hear that silence is golden, but I must say here that more and more our women are speaking out. And what I've tried to do during my tenure is to encourage even those who are like cleaners, cleaning the university. We have had a lot of them pass their A-levels and get, and then for celebrations like Women's Day, for example, we actually get our young male and female students to do sketches based on the theme. Like the last one, last Friday, was women hating women. And I think that is what we have to drive through to encourage role modeling by women to men, to young men, to girls, by encouraging each other, liking ourselves, and promoting each other. So that's the culture that we've embraced at the university. The ladies are not feared to speak, even though most of the administrators are men. I think in top management, there are just 2 of us. Myself and the Deputy Vice Chancellor for Research and Cooperation. But we, in our gentle manner, get through our points right through to the minister. So we're trying a lot to get our young women climb up the ladder. There are many of them who are now heads of departments, heads of services, not as many as we would want to, but we continue to do our best, those of us who are in any administrative positions, to encourage the others.
Thank you very much. That's interesting and exciting to hear. But before we wrap up, you know, one of the things that we have been talking about, and we've issues that have come up and which we want to embrace, is to say that we are not in this alone. We are in it together with our male colleagues. And so even though we do not have any males on our panel today, there are still a number of male in the audience. And so I would want to give a chance to one or two of them to quickly say something. Then I'll come back to our panelists for each of you to give your last word. So if you're a male and you want to contribute something, just raise your hand and I'll call you. I'm giving a chance to just two since our time is really far gone. Because there's been a lot in the chat, but if somebody wants to speak up, I'll be happy to give you the floor.
Okay, Prof. Kwesi, you have the floor. You can make your comments. Thank you.
Yeah, good.
All right. Thank you very much, Irene, and thank you very much, our host. And I would also want to add that the discussion has been really interesting and very, very insightful. And thank you to our excellent panelists. I think I have a very little message to share. And I was in, I think, Kenya, where I had opportunity to be part of a project that was ongoing to stop female genital mutilation. And the project sought to organize young girls in the school settings and educate them about female genital mutilation and what they need to do to prevent the whole issue. And the very first question I asked, which I think that is very, very significant, I asked them, why don't you also bring in the young boys to educate them about female genital? Obviously, their parents are the perpetrators of this act in their communities. And once these young boys are also growing into the same image of their parents, it is possible that when they grow up, no matter how educated they are, they may not really have a voice to really contribute to stop that menace from happening. So I think that above the excellent contributions that we have had today, men play a key role in the value chain. I think that it is important to really make sure that in such instances we have men to listen to these beautiful ideas, because I believe dialogue is very, very important. And why do I say this? For obvious reasons, we may think that I personally hold an opinion that there is nothing wrong with the gender woman, and there is nothing wrong with their capacity. Women are excellent in their own way, and they need not to be compared to any other person. They need not to be compared to males. Perhaps the only advantage that men may have is the fact that we came to the earth first, and so we may have used our own domineering power to overshadow that of women. And I think what we need to do is to make sure that we speak to the men to kind of give off the space to women to flourish, to grow. And I like the fact that in universities we are consciously making sure that we are taking away these barriers that limit women from progressing. So I think in such discussions, if we want women to challenge the status quo, if we want women to really do their best, we need to make sure that we speak to the men counterpart. Lastly, I am very excited. I listened to one of my mentors, my godmother, Professor Nopoko Ajiman. She was the first woman to be a running mate to a major party in Ghana. And then in one of her interviews on a television station, the host asked her, he questioned her capacity as a woman to be in that position. And the answer she gave to the host was that, if I was a man, would you have asked me this same question? If I was a man, would have Ghanaians be asking me this same question? I think that there is nothing wrong with being a woman in such positions. What is wrong is we changing the perception of society. And I think that these discussions must go on, not only on International Women's Day, but every forum, every platform that we do get, we must make sure that we reiterate the fact that women must be given the opportunity. We must limit the barriers as men to make sure that women flourish. Sheila made a very important comment, and I think that is central. She mentioned that women are the ones taking care of us, the men in the homes. They are taking care of our young boys. Let's take advantage of that strategy. In the next 20 years, how are we raising our young boys to embrace and accept the fact that women must coexist with men, and we must make sure that they are not in any way limited in their capacity to flourish? how do we take advantage of that process and raise quality men who will support women to flourish and to break boundaries and do excellently well? I think that this is great, and I want to congratulate AAU for this discussion, and I wish we had more men to share their little views. This is my small view as a young man. I'm not too old, but this is what I think we need to do. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Kwesi, for that contribution. And we do definitely agree that we need the males, because on this earth, God created males and females together. And so we need the males also in this conversation and to move along with us. I'd also, talking about male engagement, I know of a lady who has 3 daughters, but she has started a foundation for boys. And she was asked, why have you started a foundation for boys? You don't even have any sons. And she said, yes, she thinks that the boys need to be groomed. And she wants boys to be groomed well enough to be good husbands to her children, her daughters. And that was very interesting. So yes, we need the males. So now we want the last word from each of our panelists. And I want to start with Mrs. Sheila Naboama. A minute each, as our time is fast spent.
Thank you very much. It's been very interesting. I myself have learned a lot. I've taken a lot of notes. In conclusion, I think 2 things for me, and that positive discrimination policies have been used in many instances to correct certain persistent errors in society. And so if women are advocating for positive discrimination policies now, we are hoping that in the future we will get to an instance where the wrongs or the inequalities will be corrected, and we will not need platforms to continue to discuss areas where we have significant gaps. Another thing I would want to talk about is biases. And biases are sometimes unconscious to us. And one of the areas where there are significant biases is the capacity of women in leadership roles, importantly. People do not have biases about women when it comes to motherhood roles, or when it comes to nurturing roles, or when it comes to caregiving roles, or when it comes to servicing roles. They start doubting women when immediately they start putting themselves up for positions of formal authority. And I would want to say formal because in the informal sector, women are quite strong and there is no problem there. So maybe the problem is the earning that the formal corporate ladder offers that people are protecting. Whatever it is, we need to draw attention to the biases of people and make people conscious of their biases against women, because if you are not conscious of your bias, it affects your decisions without knowing that you made this decision against this woman just because she was a woman. So we need to confront our biases in our various decision-making capacities and be sure that we are not making decisions against anybody because the person wears a particular gender. Thank you.
Thank you very much with that. We'll ask Dr. Teresa Akafa.
Oh, thank you so much. Well, in my 1 minute, I would say what we need to look at is security, security, security. If women are not secure, if women are kidnapped, if women are terrorized, if women are victims of, all sorts of vulnerabilities, including promiscuity, terrorism, you name it, then we cannot be talking about justice, equity, inclusiveness. So there needs to be structures in place to safeguard the psychological safety of women. Security, security for the woman. This is something I would say day in, day out. And I think women need to be esteemed as equal partners in progress. Equal partners in progress, very important. And this is, because if our girls are not safe and our women are not safe, then all of this is cheap talk. Security needs to be prioritized. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. That's so insightful. Dr. Beatrice Njenga. Let's see, she's still on.
Yeah. Thank you. I'd just like to add maybe one small thing to the excellent points that have been made by colleagues. I'd like to say to women leaders, aspiring women leaders, be the leader of integrity that we say patriarchs have failed to be. And also that we should incorporate values such as equality in education from early years for boys and girls, so as to grow the different mindsets that we need for a fairer world, a gender-sensitive world. And finally, to identify the skills gaps that are necessary for better leadership, especially for women, so that we do not shoot ourselves in the foot when we lead and everybody says, "Oh, now see, we've given them and they're not doing what they ought to do." And I'd just like to share that in my university, the idea of mentorship is so important. Every single student is mentored.
Thank you. Can you hear me now? Yes.
Yes, Prof. Kindly go ahead.
Sure. Professor Nana Bamfo. I think we lost Dr. Njenga. Professor Nana Bamfo.
Thank you. As we bring this to a close, I'd like to go back to our theme, which is choose to challenge, and choose to challenge the call for gender equity, and to encourage everyone, every girl and woman to be the best that they possibly can professionally. And in that regard, I have 3 Ds, which is discover, determine, and deliver. To discover our strengths and our giftings. We don't need to strive to be like the man next door or even the woman next door. You need to discover your own thing and strive to be the best you. And when you have done that, determine to nurture your gifts through training, apprenticeship, renewal. And when we've done that, we step out of our comfort zone and deliver our nurtured expertise to the world. And we need to be resilient in our efforts to make our homes, our communities, our nations, and the world better for us and for the next generation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Professor Vice Chancellor Teresa Akenji, your last word, please. Not sure whether she's on. She may have dropped off too. No, she's there. Professor?
She needs to unmute. She needs
yes,
to
please unmute. Prof. Teresa, please unmute.
Yes, great. I'm on now. Thank you.
Yes, please.
I don't have anything more to add except that silence is not always golden, and we must break the silence. And I think the idea of the Women in Higher Education Network in Africa is going to be a platform where together we come in as one voice, one powerful voice, so that the action can begin. Because as I said at the start, we need action, and we need to get right to the primary school where we teach our young girls to speak out. And so by the time they get to secondary school, the time they get to university, the time they're adults, because the men speak out more, at least in our society here. And once we get the girls, then the women can talk. Then we can know more of the problems, and then we can challenge, not by force, but in our gentle, natural manner, to get to where our voices need to be heard. Thank you so much.
Thank you all so much. I think we got everybody now. So we've had a very interesting, stimulating discussion from different parts of the globe, from US to UK to Africa, African women scattered all over, powerful, accomplished women. And we are grateful, and we thank our male colleagues also for standing with us and for being with us in this. Basically, we are taking away the fact that we need to challenge the biases. We need to put in place structures that build integrity and values in the woman and in the boy child and in everyone, so that together we are building society. We need to put in place structures that assure the security of women, both physical security, emotional security, mental health, taking care of their mental health, and also making sure that the woman becomes the best that she can for the good of society. We are thinking of challenging the status quo for women to take up their position for the good of society, not about being selfish, not about just myself, but for the good of society. And that's what we want to end with. So thank you very much for this discussion. And we thank AAU for making this possible. And as Sam has said, next month or next year, as usual, sometimes you do have males on the panel. This time you decided that it should be all female, which is all good. And we would hope that next year, God will be with us. We will come back and have more discussion and talk about the progress that we have made. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Professor.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure.
And your strong panelists for taking us through this session. It was originally supposed to be a 1-hour session, but of course, the discussion has been so deep and has been so insightful that I think we have gone a little beyond the 1 hour. But of course, as Professor Ehile of AAU has been saying, a good discussion is the one which never ends. And you would agree from even the chat box that we've really had, a lot of people commenting, sharing their lessons, sharing their thoughts, and it means that there is really a lot that we can do. So we really want to thank all of you, both the facilitator, Professor Esther Sechi-Dawson, and your strong team of panelists for all the wonderful contribution. Just to remind participants that the program has not ended. We have only finished session 1 and session 2, and it's left with the last session, which would also last for the next 1 hour or even less. And this is mainly going to be a presentation on the African Women in Higher Education Network, WoHEN, and it will be led by Ms. Nodmod Dlamini, who is the Director of ICT Communication and Knowledge Management here at the Association of African Universities, and then Dr. Elizabeth Ayu Etang, who is the Chair Department of English and Cultural Studies at the University of Buea in Cameroon. If they are ready, would like to hand over to them so that they take us through the presentation and then also the engagement session, so that we have stakeholders contributing to the establishment of this network. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Felicia. I've thoroughly enjoyed the event so far. So my role now is to collaborate with Dr. Elizabeth Ayuk Etang in telling you more about the ideas to establish the African Women in Higher Education Network, which is shortly called WoHEN. So I'll call upon my colleague Elizabeth to talk us through these areas of discussion, and I would also be coming in where necessary. So the discussion will focus on what problems will WoHEN address, what would be the goal of this platform, what gap would it address, and what would be the specific objectives. And we also want to recognize the other initiatives that already exist, and briefly discuss what it is that they do and what it is that WoHEN will do, so that there's no duplication. So Elizabeth, you can come in, please, and take us through. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Nodomo. I'm not so excited of the last panel discussion, and I think they have made our work easier. When I listen to the presentations that they just did, I feel so excited because it's like WoHEN is here actually to address some of the issues that has been raised by women in higher education in Africa. I will start by saying that WoHEN is a network of African women, education women, that career growth as well as career development, and assisting other women in school attendance through education, research grants, etc. Or the forum is the brainchild of a group of women who came together in 2017 in Accra, Ghana, under AAU invitation. And so they thought that women have a lot of challenges, like some of the challenges you've heard, the problem of inequality in the university, the problem of maternity. I'm happy Professor Teresa Okafor has actually touched on that, because even with some of those discussions, they said, no, maternity or motherhood is not a problem. But how do we manage it? What are the kinds of policies we can put in place to encourage women? And so they had this discussion, and they said, no, but there are other existing groups in Africa. They have not been able to touch on in Africa. So a task force was created, and the task force actually came up with a concept note and looked at the aim and goal of the network of forum, and then look at the other initiatives that have existed before in Africa, and said, so if we are coming in, we don't intend to duplicate, but we intend to find ways or measures in addressing some of the issues that the panelists just addressed, the problems that we know women are facing in higher education in Africa, and how do we make it better? And one thing that struck me when the task force actually set up work, they said African men are actually making great strides in higher education in Africa. And so they are not looking as half empty, but they are looking at the glass as half full, which means that we've started from somewhere and we have to move to somewhere, but together we have to put our forces together to do what we are supposed to do. And so I will start saying that there have been a lot of these problems. I will not want to go into it, as that's the first point we are supposed to discuss, because we've noticed that most of the problems that have raised, the task force raised, has been addressed by the women and the discussions that we just had a few minutes ago. And so when WoHEN came up, the Women of African Higher Education Network, they said their objective or the goal will be, to see how they will start by uplifting each other, working with women, see how they're going to bring women on board, to promote fair practices that support women to achieve their potential in tertiary and higher education. And this will be done through advocacy, education, and research program. And so when they said this, we said, but how do we go about if we don't bring women together? And so we now said, okay, we want to duplicate the initiatives that have existed, And so how do we go about it so that we work together as a team in Africa to look at the issues of African women in higher education problems? So we started by looking at the activities, the other initiatives that we've had. And we noticed that we have the African Union International Center for Girls and Women Education in Africa, whose goal is to promote girls and women's education, to eradicate poverty, as well as the edification of peaceful world for sustainable human development. Then we also said, okay, this is fine, but now look at what FAWE is doing. When we look at FAWE, we also notice that their goal to promote girls and women's education in sub-Saharan Africa with the initiative Education for All. We said this was just perfect, and so, but then what else do we have? We also noticed that we have the Forum for African Women Vice Chancellors, which is for WAVIC, which I think that was in 2015. And they aim at increasing the pool of women in sciences, as well as championed by RUFUM and STEM education. So we said, okay, we see that all of these have girls' education basically included, and we need to see how we bring in. We could come up with an initiative going to look at some of the challenges that women face in higher education in Africa and how we're going to go about. I've listened to so many speakers. The Vice Chancellor said this is the problem. Our speaker, Teresa Okafor, Professor Okafor, said we need security. Women need security. And so then we noticed that with all these continental forum that aim to address higher education and tertiary education issues broadly affected by women, to participate effectively, to reach their potential heights as administrators, as leaders, as researchers, and even students, we make them to get involved into higher education system. So the forum therefore addresses this gap. And so they started by looking at how do we address the gap? What are the kinds of things we need, the challenges faced? And if we have these challenges, the unfair practices that stifles women from achieving their potentials. So the forum intends to address these issues at workplace equity, maturity of motherhood penalty, So if this situation, we decided that we have to get a consultative talk today in the course of launching the Women's Day, so that women should come on board, and with our sister initiatives like FAWE, FAWOVIC, and EU Center for Girls, and every other woman on board, see how we can make this work. And then our issues with being a problem, but then we lift up our problems and potentials that women have, and we showcase those potentials. And so with that said, that was the main idea we had at the back of. The task force has done all of this, but we said it won't be enough just to keep it to ourselves, but we have to bring it out there for other women's voices to be heard, so that in the course of launching this initiative, we are sure of coming up with a good or better forum that's going to look and address the issues of women in Africa higher education. I think the members of the task force, some of them are on board, and our ICT director, Ms. Nodomo, could also help us to throw some light before we start getting contributions from other participants on board. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Elizabeth. I think you've done an excellent job. I would also like the voices of Sheila and Dr. Beatrice Njenga to come in, and Felicia. On my side, the emphasis I would like to make is that We don't want to duplicate what is already going on. We believe in collaboration. We recognize that there's a gap in terms of supporting women in higher and tertiary education. The other initiatives are fine, but I think if we work together, while others focus more on girls' education and the lower levels, and others focus on STEM and science as a specific theme, that's okay. But we need an initiative that brings the wider, which sort of looks at a wider scope in terms of women in higher education. It shouldn't matter whether you are a scientist, whether you are an artist, whether you are a mathematician, whether you are someone who majored in music. It must be your space to say, hey, these are the challenges that I face. This is what we need to do so that women are more successful. So we really want to look at promoting fair practices that support women to achieve, whether they've got business ideas, whether they have entrepreneurial aptitudes. Yeah, so it's a platform. I think Elizabeth said it well, like this platform that we are having today. This would be one of the key aspects of WoHEN, to create a larger platform where all the initiatives that support women to succeed can actually come together and discuss and see whether we are making progress. I would like to encourage us to put in our comments in the chat. If you have any suggestions or any questions, please put those in the chat. But I welcome Sheila Nabwama, followed by Dr. Beatrice Njenga and Felicia Kwabeji to also put in a word or two. And then if anyone would like to make a verbal comment, please also raise your hand so that we can give you the opportunity. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. I think the presentation was clear. All I would say is that there is strength in numbers, and so this is a good opportunity for us, for the numbers to count for the change we are looking for. And so I would stand ready to give it all the support and energy I have to make it successful. And I encourage other women across the continent and elsewhere to support the initiative to grow and be successful. It will be nice 20 years down the line when we are drinking coffee in our retirement homes to watch this group grow stronger, and we'll be proud to have been part of building this. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sheila. I don't know, Dr. Beatrice Njenga, are you online? If you could put in a word or two. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Nodumo. I believe the presentation has been done very well. You have covered what it was that was on our mind. And, just the idea of having an umbrella organization that takes on board all the different disciplines, and so that the women, the young women in the pipeline, the children and the girls, can see that there's a support structure for whatever line they choose to follow, so that you're not persuading girls to do STEM for the sake of STEM, or simply because there's a clearer pathway there. Because when you have an umbrella like this, we are validating every pathway, every career pathway, every educational pathway, and therefore, a platform that is better able to access more possibilities for the women at the top, in the middle, and lower down in the pipeline. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Beatrice Njenga. Mrs. Felicia Kwabeji, do you have any comments?
Okay, I would just like to take the opportunity to really encourage all of us to get involved in this initiative, such that it doesn't just die off immediately we start it, but it grows and it's really sustainable in a way that the younger generation will actually come and appreciate it and really be thankful that we started this initiative for them. I think what I would say is that we really came up with today's session to get input from the wider community across the continent. And so I would just like to encourage all of us that beyond this session, once this session closes, after you think about anything, once you reflect and anything comes in your mind which will really be beneficial and which will help strengthen the network, please feel free to reach out to all of us. I think you registered. There's an email through which you can easily reach the Association of African Universities, just even through SecGen, which is a short form of Secretary General, secgen@aau.org. You would actually get through to us. Please reach out to us with all your thoughts on how best we can secure funding to support the network, thoughts on the various categories of women we should look at to join the network, thoughts of really how we can put things together and make it stronger so that all of us benefit. Please, I would encourage all of us to reach out and share our thoughts so that by the time we are ready to fully launch it in July, we have been able to come up with a full shape of how things would look like once the initiative takes off. So that is all I can say for now. Just encouraging all of us to own the process and to contribute and to ensure that the initiative stays on, for time immemorial. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Felicia. I will also try and monitor the chat, but we got feedback from Gechi Ibisi, who said, great, this is a good initiative. And we also got kudos from Stanley Sakala. He says, even though I'm a man, I'm in full support for you, wonderful mothers and women. Thank you very much, Stanley, for those encouraging words. Joyce Anku says, can we also think of funding support for women in higher education as one of the key elements? I think that is an excellent feedback. Women need support in terms of scholarships and research and just to reach the their higher goals in terms of education. So we take that into consideration. Stanley says he's ready to collaborate with us. Thank you so much, Stanley Sakala. Rosemary says, thanks to the team for this wonderful initiative. Mili Kwagala says, we should enhance our field of women in research. So Mili is interested in research strengthening. Lawong Maureen says, great initiative. Saratu Abdul Karim says, thanks to you all, I'm looking for a collaborator in aquatic toxicology. Thank you, we've noted. Nhlanhla Landa says, a great initiative. Stanley says he is saddened to see girls in mostly rural areas suffering a lot with no support at all. And then I saw some hands raised. I would like to call upon Dail. Plangsat. Sorry if I'm pronouncing your name wrongly. Would you like to open your microphone, please? Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think the point I wanted to make was made by Beatrice already. But just to thank you also for this initiative, I think is a noble one. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dail. I also see a hand raised from Elizabeth. Elizabeth, do you have additional feedback?
Yes, thank you so much. Thank you, beautiful women. I'm so happy when I read the comments. And we're also going to say that this initiative will be launched, and that will be done anytime soon. And the membership, because I've seen some people have written and they ask, how do I get involved? I think this information will be disseminated to the attendants or the participants of today, and even more women that will want to come on board. And everything, including membership, will be disclosed when we are sending out the information. All those were discussed, and sustainability was also discussed. They did a lot of work, and I think they are going to send out information. So don't hesitate, just be calm and make sure that we all put our hands together to build the initiative. We need more ideas. If there is an idea you people think out there that we could add to make it more sustainable and substantive, I think the task force is open to that, so that we can help build it better. And when it comes to membership, you're going to know how to get on board and go about it. Thank you. That's what I just wanted to say. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Elizabeth. Our last person to provide input is Stanley Sakala. I'll give you 2 minutes, Stanley. Thank you.
Thank you so much for according me this great opportunity to say something. Me as an educator, a teacher in a secondary school, I'm very excited and impressed indeed to be amongst you great women in Africa. And I'm keenly waiting to join an organization to push the agenda for the women, because I'm passionate about women. I've grown up in an environment where in my family a lot of women, in a community where a lot of women, I see a lot of them being sidelined, not being supported greatly. Therefore, I'm very much ready to join and work together with any organization should it be there, so that we push this agenda to a reality. Thank you so much for according this opportunity. Happy Women's Day.
Thank you so much, Stanley. Are you connecting from Zambia or from Malawi?
From Zambia, madam. I teach African languages, Nyanja and English. That's my specialty.
Okay, thank you.
From the accent.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Stanley. It's most appreciated. Thank you very much. Okay, so I think also the comments in the chat, you can take a look. Thank you from Professor Teresa Kenji. She said the women of Bamenda University in Cameroon would be keen to give us additional feedback. So we look forward to that feedback. Judith, thank you for saying, for giving us your feedback. Also, the fact that this is a great initiative. Nkechi Ibisi had asked whether registrars and women in higher education who are non-academic staff can join. And yes, they can. Thank you to Beatrice, who already responded to some of the questions there. Yes, this is also for administrators, so it's not just for academics. Felicia, let me hand back to you because I believe we are not doing well in terms of time. Thank you very much. This has been excellent. Thank you very much, Elizabeth, for supporting the session.
Thank you very much, Ms. Nodumo Dlamini and Dr. Elizabeth, for taking us through that session. I think that at least by the end of this session, we all would have known a little bit about the WoHEN, and we are all looking forward to when it will be launched, and really to providing our input so that the team that is working on the formation can really finalize things and launch it come July. And we know that all participants will join us during the main launching ceremony as well. With that being mentioned, I think we'll move on to the next item on the program, which is where we'll be taking the goodwill messages from other sister networks and key partners who are also promoting the advancement of women and girls empowerment and education in Africa. And to start with, would like to invite Dr. Rita Bisunoth, who is the head of mission of AUCFA. AUCFA is the International Center for Girls and Women's Education in Africa, which was established by the African Union Commission. If Dr. Rita Bisunoth is ready, I would like to invite her to deliver her message. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Felicia. Professor Ehili, Secretary General of the AAU, Vice Chancellors of universities, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much for inviting the African Union International Center for Girls and Women's Education to this meeting, which is we are here to speak about such an important theme. That is, here we want to talk about choose the challenge on this International Women's Day. And for us at the AUCFA, the challenge that we want to talk about is on the number of women heads of states in our continent. If we have 10 fingers on our hands, and even the 10 fingers do not even amount to the number of heads of states in our continent. We have only had 9 heads of states up to now in our continent. And out of the 9, some of them have only been in acting position, or they have been vice heads of states. And I think this is a question, this is a challenge that we have to think about. Is it because Africa is afraid to embrace women African heads of states? It is true that women, we have made numerous strides on numerous fronts in gender equality, such as having more women in the parliament, we have more women in professional and technical jobs, but still, the number of women in leadership positions is still very low. Women, we remain largely invisible, or we are lacking at the high-level decision, policy making, and governance circle. Why? Because we still face pervasive and subtle attitudes and beliefs, portraying women to be unequal to men, whether it be at home, at work, or in the government. We also face structural barriers, such as having discriminatory laws and institutions limit often women's efforts to run for office and to become leaders of our country or of our continent. We also, as women, encounter capacity gaps when compared to men. We are less likely to be given the opportunities of education, resources, contacts, and having women role models. And this is key, especially in higher education. How many women professors do we see at higher education levels, especially in the STEM areas? Not many. In this midst of the COVID-19 crisis and its multi-dimensional repercussions, resulting in school closures, many of our schools are still closed in our continents. This has affected, if not halted, so many dreams of our young girls and our women in the continent, especially their dreams and aspirations of becoming leaders tomorrow. Making matters worse, unless we choose to do something, we run the risk of losing all the decades of progress that we have made in enrollment, in transition, in progress and completion rates at primary, secondary educational systems in our continent. And yet, research and anecdotal evidence suggests that where women are involved at leadership positions, governments are more likely to respond to crisis in ways that support gender equality. And we have seen in so many countries where we have women leaders, women heads of states, how this crisis. So when a woman is engaged in governance and leadership positions, that means it is meaningfully promoted and it creates a ripple effect on all spheres, but also it makes economic sense. Percent of the income back into their families compared to only 30 to 40% by men. As the head of the African Union International Center for Girls and Women's Education, we make it a must to train, to build capacity of our young men and women, and we do so every year. We now have an alumni of over 200 young women in our continent, and every year we train, we build capacity of young women in the areas of leadership, entrepreneurship, financial literacy, digital literacy, public speaking, communication skills, and most especially on challenging gender norms and stereotypes. These workshops raises young men and young women's awareness on the role that they have to play in their communities as being key actors at grassroots level to influence mindsets and to stop harmful practices such as FGM, domestic violence. And I want to say that many of the youth from our alumni have been able to find other jobs and have done so much to enhance their community. This year of the International Women's Day could not be any more relevant. We are presented with the best case scenario where we have to rethink about how to level this playing field. From a continental standpoint, this year's themes undoubtedly provides a plethora of opportunities for our governments to launch a broad, all-inclusive approach to policymaking and rebuilding a caring, humane, in a sustainable manner, implicating key stakeholders such as having the African Union member states, the civil society, the private sector, the economic partners, as well as the financial partners. It is important to have a multi-stakeholder approach, and this will give ownership to each stakeholder with the moral obligation to ensure that every girl and woman is on board to able to face bigger challenges in all our society, in our society. If we have more men and women at the center of not just governance, but they will be here to shape the social and economic orders, chances are that we will have a more resilient, human, and ethical future for all. I am convinced that we have the ability to build Africa back from this pandemic, and this depends on safeguarding gender equality. Thank you for listening, and happy International Women's Day to all of you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Bisonot, and happy International Day to you as well. We have really enjoyed your keynote. Excuse me to say, we have really enjoyed your goodwill message, and we are grateful that you were able to join us. At this point, we would like to take the next goodwill message, and this will be delivered by Madame Juliette Kumoto, who is the Acting Deputy Executive Director for FAWE. If she's on, we are ready to take your message, please. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Felicia. Vice President Chancellors in the room, all protocols observed. Thank you so much for giving FAWE this opportunity to deliver this goodwill message. The Forum for African Women Educationalists, better known as FAWE, is delighted to join the Association of African Universities, which is AAU, African Ministers of Higher Education, academics, researchers, and all stakeholders promoting higher education in marking the 2021 International Women's Day. Like the rest of you, FAWE prioritizes promoting gender equality, equity, and inclusion in Africa's education system. We welcome this year's International Women's Day theme, Choose to Challenge, as it squarely resonates with our collective of ensuring we challenge all the barriers that befall women and girls in pursuit for education. At a time where we are all experiencing the effect of a grave pandemic that has threatened the life and safety of our women, we are challenged to remain steadfast in addressing the dire needs of women in crisis situations. FAWE salutes all the education stakeholders that have come to the rescue of our female teachers by providing them with cautionary incentives to assist them endure the tough times in their teaching profession. We thank governments that are prioritizing alternative pathways for education for young women who drop out of school, including but not limited to TVET and adult learning initiatives. Supporting the reintegration of pregnant girls and teenage mothers in Africa's education system will also help us reduce the large number of out-of-school children, girls in the continent. We must remember that our girls will one day be women who will be expected to enter in the socio-economic, political, and cultural spaces of leadership and decision-making. They too will be obligated to make informed decisions and choices that befit generations to come. The kind of higher education we provide to our women and girls today dictates the kind of workforce that is and will be mandated to drive Africa's economic growth. We need to challenge the stigma and stereotyping of women who pursue STEM education, who choose to challenge the conventional way of thinking that disassociates women with sciences and in sciences and technology. We need to challenge the negative ideologies that label women studying political courses and pursuing political positions as aliens of the epitome of feminine roles. In fact, we must challenge the negative perspectives of gender roles and instead embrace equality, equity, and inclusiveness in higher education institutional learning curricula, leadership assignment in universities, and industrial attachment, including encouraging more women to head institutions of higher education.